Welcome to In or Out, the European Ultimate Federation's show about the European Ultimate Club season. I'm your host, Ravi Vasudevan, and we're here with I don't know exactly what episode of the season, but the second real episode with rankings. We're going to talk about the results of Tom's Tourney, Vienna Spring Break, and the Warsaw Invite, and how that impacted the rankings and everything overall. We're going to have interesting guests today. We're bringing on Liam Grant, commentator and tournament organizer, and we're going to start the chat off with a little bit of maybe critique. He's not been the biggest fan of the system overall, and I told him, yeah, I'll give you the chance to come on and say what you want about it. Before we get there, though, a couple notes about what happened during the spring tour. We had a new camera system that was supposed to be coming in. So for the coverage, we want to apologize, especially to teams in Grenoble, including my own team, that basically what ended up happening is we were supposed to get an AI camera to cover the tournament. The camera didn't arrive, so we had to scramble around to find some solution. Is No Good graciously allowed us to use their VO camera that they pay for and they use, but of course they said, if you're going to do that, we pay for this camera, so all of our games need to be streamed because we paid for this so that we can analyze our games. So basically we had to make some last minute adjustments to make sure that all the rounds that Is No Good played, they were on stream, and that's why there were some last minute changes and some teams didn't get streamed the way they want. So apologies for that. And I know there were also some issues in the Timisoara tournament as well. Camera not really functioning after a while. We're learning. We're trying to get as much coverage as possible, doing many events simultaneously. Didn't quite work out the best for Spring Tour, but we hope to finalize and finish stuff much better as the season goes on. With that being said, let's bring on Liam Grant and start a little chat with our good friend Liam. How you doing?
I'm good, Ravi. I'm good. Had a fun weekend at Tom's Tourney. I think both of us are playing, which is pretty unusual. It's good
Yeah.
to see. There's life in the old dogs yet, and I had a wedding as well. I actually missed Saturday and went to a wedding, had a great time. So a fun weekend. My elbows are shredded from the dusty, dry fields of Bruges. Bring back the rain. Remember, it used to rain at Tom's Tourney, be cold. I think I prefer that than the sun and dry fields. How was your time at Tom's?
Yeah, I did end up twisting my ankle on the fields, partially due to that, partially to getting slapped in the face by somebody who tried to get a D when I already had the disc and took me off balance and landed on my ankle poorly. But I think the hard ground definitely contributed to how hard the sprain was. So that was too bad for me. But yeah, I don't know which I prefer. I remember some Tom's Tourney in the cold rain and hail, and I think I maybe prefer this, even though it kind of sucks. We had a few more injuries than we would have liked. I know probably you with your Irish roots prefer a little bit of drizzle and some wet, nice fields, I guess.
Laying out in the rain is much nicer. Everything else is much nicer in the sun and dry fields, but I'm sure everyone playing had a couple of moments where they knew they had to get like lay out on the hard ground, and it was daunting, scary. It was looking at a beach sometimes. Someone said, "Are you playing 10 and 12 the beach fields?" Because it's the hard dust. But yeah, I think all of Northern Europe's been pretty dry. It's been an
Yeah,
exceptionally dry winter in Ireland. Don't know, it's like it's where you Netherlands, France, who knows?
I'm in the Netherlands. Yeah, and I think that we have a dust bowl for our fields as well. I think Dutch and Belgian fields don't really use their sprinkler systems very much because they usually don't have to, and I think they're going to have to realize that maybe they need to change the way they do field maintenance as climate change modifies how things go up in this region. All right. So we brought you here. Of course, you're a commentator, of course, into the European scene. But also a good friend of mine. We've talked a lot. And I will say I've gotten most people have been very, very positive about the new system and everything that's going on there. Not that you're like super negative about it, but you've been a little more critical than others. And I did say to you, eventually we'll get you on the show so you can hash out what your issues with it are, what kind of things you remember about the glory days of UCR and everything. What do you miss? And so let's go. It's your show right now. We'll go maybe 10, 15 minutes of this before we go into the rankings. Liam, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, well, I am a minority in this, I think. And I'm not saying the regionals was the best thing ever. I think this system might actually be better than that, but I don't know if it's the best system. And I have some criticisms for it. It's not necessarily go back to the good old days. It could be there's some adjustments to be made. And I'd love to debate those thoughts. So,
All right.
and I think it's important to say I really like everyone in UF. I've actually worked closely with them, yourself, Nemo, everyone. I know how committed to the sport you are, and this is an effort to try something different to improve it. And I totally get that. And I like testing and trying things differently. So I just want to like, it's not, I'm not having to stop the F here, but I'd like to debate some of the differences, I think, and maybe there's, something we can learn from that in a positive way. So I'll bring up like 5 or 6 little points that I'll throw to you and see what your thoughts are.
All right.
So first one with the system, the new system, I'm wondering, like, it does feel like there's an extra cost and commitment to players in what is like an already very busy sport. If you're playing for national teams, if you're going to U24s already or Worlds in Australia last year, to go to, it feels like you might have to travel internationally more, and you kind of have to bring your full roster as well. I think teams might before gone to Tom's and Windmill early on the season, and someone's like, "Hey, I'm missing for a wedding," and whatever. It wasn't a big of a deal. Well, now if you're ranking games, you really want to have your top squad. So, like, that'd be my first point. And I don't know what's your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about it that it's for a lot of teams more expensive. For some teams, maybe less. I mean, teams that are in maybe in the UK or Germany or France, where they have highly populous, a lot of EUCS teams in their country, they actually have ways that they can get games at nationals to count towards the ranking system and maybe just play one international tournament and then play their own nationals and they get their 10 games in. But for tournaments, for teams that are out in the East and the North that maybe only have one team in their country that plays a UCS, it's more of a challenge. And I think we talked a bit before the show. We mentioned Atletico last year. They ended up coming into a summer tour, crushing it, showing that they were clearly would have been a top 8 team at UCF, but were not able to commit to the season this year. I will say that Atletico, even in the previous system, would probably come to the UCF 1 out of 3 years anyways. I mean, they it wasn't like the previous system was super accessible for them either. They are a team with like, I don't know how they do it. They have like 12 elite players that just kind of exist there and then don't have a big enough team to do much else with it. And every now and then they can come together and try and compete internationally, but they can't. Yeah. We have tried to make some efforts to move tours into diverse areas so that everybody has a tour close by that they can go to. Um, but I will agree that for some teams, for sure, needing to get 10 games in instead of having to just go to one EUCR tournament will probably be a bit more expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me on to my second point of is this hurting other tournaments in Europe? I think we saw it in the US when they brought in like the Triple Crown Tour. We saw tournaments like Labor Day and stuff kind of fall away with the kind of like a little bit of a forced commitment to the season. Let's say, and I think that's probably the case of the UF. Like, if you're really realistically trying to qualify for UCF, you probably want to go to a summer invite and a spring tour. Okay, you might pick up ranked games elsewhere, but that can be tricky at times. So, like, I'd love your thoughts first before you have mine. Like, have you seen this? Have this something you've talked about with like the big tournaments? Like Windmill and Tom's are like the most highly sought and after tournaments. Have they seen it? Like, I saw a tournament cancelled in Ireland here, Tribal Gathering.
Mhm.
I'd have a feeling if it was the old system, that tournament might have taken place. So what's your feelings on that?
Yeah, this was a huge talking point when we were both in the over COVID. We had this sort of transition committee that was talking about how we would go to a new system, and with the new competition committee, year after year, we've been talking about this as an issue. We do not want to replicate what happened in the US, where these great tournaments like Tom's and Windmill die out. We are doing our best to work with them. We actually had a meeting. We had we actually had 4 competition committee members playing at Tom's. One of them didn't make the meeting, but so 3 of us went and talked to Glenn and Boris. We had a meeting on, I think it was Thursday night after dinner, and we just sat down with them and we had a big chat about like where should Tom's be in terms of relevancy, and some ideas were floated, like should Elite Invite be hosted at Tom's and then have a separate tournament for the rest, and that maybe would kind of change the dynamic of Tom's too much. Should they do stuff like decide what to do? And there's other things that are outside of this in terms of like what does national teams do to toms, and this has always been a conversation they have. That's a whole separate thing that they're trying to deal with. I know all the Belgian teams were gutted in terms of quality because the Belgian U24 team was there, and some people like the fact that happens because the U24 teams in Europe get a good, place to prove themselves and improve themselves. And some people say, no, let's have some club tournaments and the national teams can do their own thing. That's not really anything to do with this system, but that's another conversation. There's just part of the complexities of what's going on in European Ultimate. But we floated some ideas like if they're up for integrating in a bit different way, maybe making Div 1 mandatory for EUCS, they're open to do that, and we're open to talk ideas with them. But we have been making those conversations happen, and we are absolutely trying to make sure that it doesn't happen, that those tournaments die out or become less relevant or whatever. Now, you have to accept that, okay, if teams have to go to a spring tour or elite invite, they're probably going to do one less travel tournament in their events, and maybe some tournaments like Windmill or whatever will get a bit smaller because teams aren't going to be willing to go out there. I see John Dock here in the chat say Tom's Windmill will probably be fine. It's a smaller events, like you mentioned, Tribal Gathering, that might be suffering more, maybe more from the spring tours, because I was thinking Elite Invite would suck teams away. Yeah, I think if you're a small tournament and this is an issue for you, definitely reach out and let's try and find a way. Maybe you could host a spring tour as your tournament instead, or you could see if we can work out a way to make your tournament more relevant for UCS teams, if that's what teams are clamoring for. But yeah, like what is going to happen is teams are going to need to want to get their ranking points in, and if your tournament can offer that, some teams will prefer that. Yeah.
Yeah, like I really like Tom's having national teams there, and you might have national teams, or you have Deep Space and Friends, and you've like party pickup teams are actually really good. Same with Windmill. Like sometimes the best team there is a pickup team dressed as mermaids, and they're awesome, and that's a really fun thing for the tournament as well. And like
And it
I think
attracts
it's
the
part of
U.S.
the
national team. If it was an EUCS event only, it would never attract the U.S. national team. And it's
yeah,
great that
yeah,
they've built something that does that for sure.
yeah, and like I think the best thing for competitive European Ultimate the last year or two is maybe London Invite. And
Mhm.
like I remember saying before, why in London doing a tournament? Now they are, and I really like the kind of hype they're building around it. And like, if you look at compared to the beach season where you have, Paganello kind of competing with Copatanga to be the most fun tournament, and it's about pricing, and it's like I feel it's almost like a capitalism and communism sometimes away. Like the UF season is a bit like you're part of this big system, while like the other one was just like best tournament's going to win it out. Whoever can
Mhm.
organize the best tournament for the best price, teams are going to go. And I'm wondering, really like damaging that ecosystem at times.
Mhm.
Um, I do wonder about that. I think Doc is right in a sense, especially for smaller tournaments. And even I think Tribal Gathering has heard from Irish teams not going because they're like, hey, like Pelt didn't go last year in their mixed team because they're like, we need so many weekends to qualifying tournaments. And even though you're up the road, it's not really part of our season. And then they're just not going to go. So I do worry about that. And I do like the culture of Frisbee of like in Europe about those party tournaments that are also really competitive.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. I do worry about damaging that. And I think that's something I'm glad that you're talking about it anyway.
Yeah, one idea
Um,
Tom's floated was maybe, like, let's say they want 24 open teams, perhaps reserving 12 of them to be EUCS and then have 12 of them be EUCS or not, so that at least EUCS teams going know they can get a reasonable number of games, but also leave space for Deep Space and Friends and whatever to come as well. So we are all working on it, and as the sport evolves, things are going to change, so you do have to realize that it's not always going to be the way it was, and sometimes things will get worse for some people and better for other people, and we'll push and pull and go in different directions, but at least you can rest assured that that is something that's on our minds, and we're trying to weigh and balance that as we try to make a nice structured competitive season for European clubs, as well as keep a bit of what was
yeah,
there before.
I also think there was a need for more competitive minded tournaments at the high level, and kind of
Yeah.
I think there was maybe a need for that. So I think elite invite is a good thing, and maybe even if you were to go back to a more traditional system, still having those kind of competitive events, I think would be a good thing. Um, the algorithm and the score difference. Like I find that I watch so much sports, all
Yeah.
different kinds of sports, whether it's surfing or rugby or Gaelic football, and like I find it so much value on score difference, and I don't see it in any other sport realistically. And like the idea of a team qualifying in the instance of, hey, well, we lost 15-10 to Mooncatchers and you lost 15-7, and that could be the difference.
Yeah.
Like you would never see that in like the Premier League football. Like, oh, well, Arsenal beat Ipswich 1-0, but Liverpool beat them 7-0, so they're the better team. Like a win is a win in all of the sports. And like I just don't know how fair that is or is a good way to decide things. And I find sometimes maybe the top teams, I don't think Mooncatchers or Clapham or Gross and Women's or stuff are that worried about the score difference. I think they
Mhm.
know they're going to qualify. And like
Yeah.
I think Clapham this at Tom's was running 3 lines of 7 and we're trying to work on different things. And like you could get a bit shafted by one of those big teams, maybe resting players because they know they're playing a good team later, and that could be the decision. And like I can't imagine any other sports league going like, wow, this frisbee thing is really cool. We're going to start doing that. And
Mhm.
you know, Kansas City Chiefs win all their games but aren't the ranked team because they didn't hammer the good teams or didn't stay close. You know, I find that really hard to understand. Or like I think a lot of traditional sports people might feel the same. Maybe I'm wrong,
Mhm.
but I
So
don't know if there's a counter argument. Go on, give it to me.
I'll give you the counter argument. The counter argument is that in what you've talked about, Premier League, NFL, these are closed leagues where a schedule can be designed so that the schedule is more or less fair. With Premier League, every team plays each other twice. So it's super like, and there, of course, you can also get a team that's playing well at one part of the season or not, but still, every team plays each other twice. So making the win count matter is super straightforward there. Here, some teams get to play Clapham 3 times, some teams never play Clapham. So if you would only take win loss, the teams that go, then teams would just be really incentivized to go to as weak as tournaments as possible because you'd want to avoid ever playing good teams, and we don't want that. Then teams would say, okay, I don't want to go to Elite Invite because that means I'm going to get a bunch of losses on my schedule. So I would rather go to spring tours instead of Elite Invite. And so if we don't make that point difference thing, like that's the problem, is that you're incentivized away from playing good teams. With Premier League, you can't do that. They tell you have to play everybody. So that's why that gets solved in that sense. But we can't have 40 teams around Europe and force them each to play each other once. That like is not tenable. So that's why we can't really have just a win-loss record work. And if
Yeah,
in the NFL and stuff, they have divisions or conferences, however they call it, and then people have games within there, and then they play a couple out of conference games or whatever. But still, like you're trying to win within this bubble, and then a couple of those make the playoffs, and that's a whole different structure. That's also how the UFA does
yeah,
it
kind of
in the US.
regionals and wild cards essentially. Kind of is that kind of the system?
No, well,
Which
kind of, but yeah, but then
I think it is. That's what I would be much more of a fan of. And like, I don't want to debate about this point too much, but like, I think a game to go is a much better way to decide who goes. I think it was the Heidi's and Isna Good in the open division, kind of on
yeah,
the brink last time. Like, I think somehow a situation where they're playing each other is a much better way to decide it. Like at this time, at this place, and it's more for the bubble teams. I think for like the Claphams and Mooncatchers, it doesn't really matter. Or the Yakas and the things, they're going to qualify. They're not. While like for you, your team, UFO,
yeah,
like the big thing is trying to qualify for UCF. That's what you want.
hmm
And like you playing against the 16th rank or 15th ranked team to go,
yeah,
I think is great sports entertainment. And the old system, we did a very bad job of actually filming that and hyping it. And if you have the same amount of effort you're putting into in and out or doing this ranking into like showcasing them or creating other situations where you get to go to the game, I think it's much better to watch. I've heard you at times talk about refreshing your phone and seeing the algorithm update, and like me, I think it's much more exciting to have that game
watch
to
a
go. And I
game.
played in 4 or 5 of them, maybe got through in 3 of them. We're in that game to go the first Irish team to ever qualify
Yeah,
yet. And that was very exciting.
yeah,
Having like a universe point game for that, I think we've lost that. And like I think we've lost that entertainment side of it a little bit. And like we don't
yeah. And
do it in
you and I are
UCF.
You and I are friends with Pat Stegemuller from the US, and I think the day that Blueprint qualified for nationals was maybe like the best day of his life. And like that
Yeah,
doesn't
and
exist
I
here.
watched that game,
Yeah.
and like, I think one of the most exciting games of this season is going to be that is it the which invite in the Open Division looks like. I think a team that is not going to be ranked top 16 is going to have the opportunity to qualify in a final.
Hmm.
Could be like Smog versus I don't know who else is there, like Wroclaw or something like that.
Yeah.
That's going to be a really exciting game because
Yeah.
essentially probably going to be a game to go.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch that
Yeah.
because I think that's good sports entertainment. And
That
like
is what we tried to do to weigh it, that we have these summer tours, but of course you do get, it depends who's in your summer tour, and you don't really have control over that. You apply to which one you go to or whatever, and we do have that still game to go to win that thing. But if you're in a summer tour with Lafota, you're probably not gonna get in that way, right? I will argue the
yeah,
counterpoint. I agree, but I agree. I love games to go, and this is one of the things that I was sad to see go from the system before. And I think it's one of the costs. There's always costs and benefits to every system. I think this system probably gets the top 16 more correct than the last system. And whether you think that's good or
I,
bad.
I I I think you're right, and that's a big pro. And you said it to me last year, and I was like, "Fuck, I think he's right about that one. I think he's got me on that." But like, at what cost? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And
But
like, I I
sorry,
think this year might not be the case with this
yeah.
summer tour Poland. It might
Yeah.
not actually be the case. And like, as opposed to before, we probably had lots of situations where it didn't happen due to regional diversity. Actually, was
Yeah.
the reason, as opposed to lucky dip draw, are people trying to game the system a little bit? Like, sorry, go on. You're going to say something there?
Yeah, so the other thing I would say is that I think that in Europe, and maybe this is a bit of a different with the US, because I think in the US there's more of a depth of teams. Maybe the 20th team is a bit better than the 20th team in Europe. I say that as right now a 30th or so ranked European team. Um, that I think a lot of the games to go, maybe at UK Nationals, it was a bit different. But in other regions, I think it would. You said like, oh, the 15th and 16th. If Isno and Heidi's played each other, that would be epic, right? But guess what? Isno is south and Heidi's is central. They wouldn't have played each other. It would have been one of those regions had the bid, and it would be Heidi's versus like the 40th best team that was in the central, or Isno versus the 40th best team in south. So you wouldn't have had that game either. And now at least those two teams were competing with each other as they were the 16 and 17 teams, right? So I hear what you're saying. I miss games to go. I hope that the wild card game is good. Like I know Heidi's went into that wild card game against Wall City, like hoping they could do as well as possible. They came out guns blazing, and then they burnt out. And actually, because they played that game and got crushed by Wall City by the end of it, that's what pushed them out of the UCF altogether. I know they thought they could win that game. They were backing themselves to win that game. Maybe it would have been more exciting if that was Heidi's Isno, but still, Heidi's Wall City was there, and Wall City came out, and Wall City was like, "We want to take that game," and they did. So it still exists a little bit, but I agree, it's something we lost a little bit. I will totally give you that one.
Thanks for conceding that one to me. I'm going to pool a few more little points together because I know we're taking some time.
Yeah.
And then I have some thoughts on the rostering actually and a few other
Okay.
things. But like I do think I think teams, it's hurting their development of roster a little bit at times. And actually Randall said this to me, where every point in game matters. So before they might be winning a game by a lot or losing a game by a lot, and be like, okay, let's run some of our weaker players to get them time and experience. You can't do that at all. And
Mm-hmm.
like I think it is asking a lot of the best players at times, and maybe that's hurting the weaker players in rosters. That's a small point. Carbon footprint. I do think we're now seeing teams flying over and back across Europe more at times. I think to help them qualify, as opposed to like I said to Sean that recently. He's like, oh, I think those English teams just wanted to go play different teams, and that's what's happening anyway. And team went to other tournaments, but I do think people are like, I'm going to Espoo or Poland because I think it's actually going to help us qualify. And I'm like, are we encouraging this mass movement of frisbee players? Which, like, if you're elite frisbee team, you already have the carbon footprint of a small country. But that's
I, I
another little point.
I will say that so far in seeing the applications, teams are still like 99% of teams are still picking the tour that's closest to them every time. Nobody's really trying to game it like and go further away to win a wild card. I haven't seen that yet. Maybe it'll happen.
XBI are doing that. I think they're doing that. Smog,
XVI are
all
doing
those.
I mean,
I'm just gonna
they're
start
going
throwing
to
shade randomly.
Denmark. I don't know that there's any. Was there a closer one for them? I think they're an open. Yeah, maybe there was, but
Yeah,
yeah.
they. I don't know. I'm just gonna start throwing shade at anyone that's flying across Europe, which is something I do all the time. So I shouldn't be.
You fly across
Like
the world just to talk about frisbee on a microphone. So I think you should be
yeah,
careful with your
but
throwing stones around.
I'm really good at it though, Ravi. Splitting the mixed season, which is maybe country specific, like something I think Irish teams, like I know Reading was the team that did it, maybe Smog, Pelt, where you're like a club that plays open women's and mixed, and you might move throughout the season and play different things. And did France do that a bit? I feel like Australia are like a country that example, like where players typically play both or have some experiences. Is that something similar in France? I'm not. You'd know a lot
Yeah,
better than me, but
yeah.
I
France.
wonder do
Well,
we hurt that?
France is actually really close together. So it's like early spring they do mixed, and late spring to early summer they do open women's. To respond to that, I think that this was the same thing in regionals too. When you got to EUCR, you still have to pick one or the other.
Yeah,
And now you're just saying we're not saying you can't play whatever at your national level. You can do that, but at the European level, you have to pick one team. We can't have otherwise. It's like how do we qualify teams? It's like you'll have Steph Dosher playing for Badskid in Colorado throughout the season, and then Colorado are super good, and then Colorado go to UCF, but he's not going to be there. You don't really want that either, right? So like if for this Euro thing to happen, you have to pick a team and stick with it. Yeah.
yeah. I guess just have to do that maybe earlier on the season with the commitments. It's not a big thing, but it was on my little notes of
Hmm.
issues. Same
And
with money and
Dosher did. He
time.
played nationals with Colorado, and then
Yeah,
they, as an example,
that's good.
they didn't count the games. They beat TFC Taucher in semis or quarters or whatever, and then Colorado weren't very good at the European level. But that's his choice to play bad skid. Like we still allow that. It's just you can't do it at the Euro level.
Yeah, but I think that's a good thing in Europe that we allow or kind of encourage people playing multiple divisions. I think that helps us with world games and stuff like that. Actually,
Hmm.
um, so yeah. Last point on the money and time on the system. Like I think if EUF put as much money and time and effort into the old system, it might have been better, like in terms of just in and out or coverage or things like that. So I think that's like a fair comparison to make. Also, like cost for players and UF compared. I've no doubt this costs a lot more, whatever it's doing the ranking system or like it, I'm sure there's more staff required. I'm not throwing any shade at them. I know they work very hard, but like, yeah, I think that needs to be when you're comparing, let's say, the old system or a different system. I think you do have to factor that in. I don't know if you need to say anything on that. I want to
Fair.
talk about one thing that is irrelevant to the system, which I think is only the most important thing is roster changing, which I don't understand. Like players changing teams mid-season, I feel like for competitive advantage, and I feel like that should not be allowed. And like I'm going to mention players here, and those players are playing by the rules and are lovely players. It's not a shot at them.
Hmm.
I think the obvious one I can think of from last year was Pavan. He's playing for, is it Padova? He was playing for, or
Yep.
which the Italian team?
And
And
then
like I
switch to
feel like
TFC
it changed.
Taucher in the transfer window.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like the big problem I think with that is if you play Tifu Tauscher or was it Padova? Is
Yeah.
that the team he's playing
Padova
for?
Rangers. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
you played them with Pavan and then he leaves them and someone else plays them. Like it's not fair for that team. They could end up, you lost to them and another team beats them that you think you're better than because potentially they didn't have their best player there. That's factored into the rankings, and like I think that distorts the rankings unfairly. Um, I think it should be like the default is you're not allowed change. I think you should be allowed apply to commissioner to UF. And I think there's situations where like, hey, I lived in London, I'm moving to Brussels, I want to play Moon Cup, and I'm changing job. And so I think people should totally be allowed change for that reason. And like my future is now here, or it could be another reason like I broke up with my boyfriend and we're on the same mixed team, we don't want to play anymore. Or like there should be, I'm happy for EUF to have that discretion
Yeah.
at times. And like I think a lot of players, it wouldn't matter if it's like Liam Grant is moving from Pelt to the XVI. Well, he sucks for both those players, so who cares? Let him move. They probably don't want him anyway. But like I do think like allowing certain amount of players changing mid-season massively, not massively, but maybe distorts the rankings and unfairly affects teams.
Yeah.
Is that a fair comment to make?
Um, it could be. I think we if we want to dive in, we'll see. We're not gonna have that much time today because we have to look at the rankings now. But we could look at the rankings last year and see like how were the games of Padova Rangers before and after the transfer window. Were they doing much better later than earlier, and would that affect teams? We can look at that. Um, but what I wanted to say is that we're actually way more restrictive now than we were before. Before, teams were able to add people after EUCR, and like basically you would not qualify with your team, and I think in open there was 3 people you could add, and then once your team didn't qualify, okay, add 3 more people and whatever. And with women's and mixed, it was 5 or whatever. At least now we've made it so you can only make modifications mid-season, not after the season. So we have made it more restrictive, and we are always looking at ways to thread that balance of being flexible, because this is a sport that people pay to play. We're not paying them anything, so we can't, you don't want to get too restrictive, but keep that competitive balance alive. I personally think the transfer window is a nice balance. We have like a couple weeks in the season that you can actually move around, and you have a limited 3 per team in open, 5 per team in women's and mixed that you can do. If you say, yeah, that's still too open, I think if we had to, I don't remember how many transfers there were last year. I think there were like 20 or 30 maybe. If we would have to manually approve every single one of those, that might be asking a bit more, and that would cost more for us to have to hire staff to do that stuff. So keep that in mind, that we'd have to weigh that in.
Again, like the old system, it wasn't unfairly distorting the rankings that someone might not qualify. You know what I mean? I think that is the issue. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if it didn't affect other teams qualifying, move around. But the thing is, again, if you play Padova Rangers and they had 3 of the best players who then left, and then another team plays them and smashes them, and that's the reason you don't qualify for UCF,
Yeah.
that would suck.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, I'm not having
There
throwing
was
shade at
there
those
was
players at
this
clubs.
season before we did this. Don Demarais, Tom Blossman, and Luca Bouchon played for Jet Set, qualified with a spring invite wild card. And then we realized, okay, spring tour wild card's got to be out for one. And that's why we made these roster restrictions that if you qualify a team with a wild card, that you have to stay on that team. So if you win if your team wins a lead invite, you can't move. So we've made some things like that. I think it's valid what you're saying. We want to make it, yeah, it's always a battle keeping things flexible enough for people. I think it's really hard for us to say Liam Grant's allowed to transfer, but Pavan is not allowed to transfer. Like, we can't just be like, oh, you're too good to transfer. I think that's like getting very subjective, and from a rules perspective would be
Yeah,
pretty tough.
I like subjective and spirit of the game. I think the intention is you're starting a season with the team you're intending to play for, and that has
Yeah,
to be the
yeah,
what you're planning to play the whole season with them. You have to prove that if for some bizarre reason or change of life situation that you're changing. I think a lot of players are going in with the intention of changing mid-season,
hmm
and that affects up the rankings.
okay.
Maybe not that much that it's actually changed a lot, but yeah,
I don't think
like
it's a
that.
lot. I think Pavan was
Probably hasn't been a lot,
a very huge
but
case. And because I
I
think
think
that's
it'll
also
happen
a risk
again.
for them, right? They can mess their ranking up. Of course, you say TC Talker's not worried about not qualifying, so they won't care. But we'll see. We'll see what he does. This year he's back on Padova Rangers at the beginning of the season again. So we'll see if he does the same move halfway through or not.
Okay,
um,
I think that's my little rant on that over, like, if you're asking what I would prefer to do, I
yeah.
would like to go back to regionals, hot take. So teams like Atletico can turn up to one event to qualify.
Yeah. So they can
I
come one
think
out of 3
having
years like they did last time.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think like having some kind of elite invite spring tour with wildcards is actually a good thing. And there should be maybe a spot or 2 reserved for that.
hmm
And it should be maybe the highest ranked team at those events. So it encourages teams to go to them, and then maybe even if you finish 5th elite invite and you didn't qualify in regionals, you then get it, or something like that. It kind of encourage, you know, if the problem last time I think was regionals would change the level of quality and the best teams were qualifying. I also think like trying to promote the Div 2 into being like a promotion and relegation team, that like the bottom teams at EUCF like lose their bid, and let's say the top 2 3 teams at Div 2 like earn those spots for the region, and makes actually like gives Div 2 a reason. I think I really like the Div 2 idea,
hmm
and I think there's a problem with burnout, but if you have less early on in the season, I think all the teams might actually go to Div 2. I think that's gonna be a big problem now with teams being offered a spot in Div 2 is like, we've spent all our money. I don't know if we really want to spend it on Div 2, but if it's like, hey, you
We'll find
can
out. Yeah.
earn a spot for your region if you actually win it,
Uh-huh.
and like take a spot away from another region, or you like win a spot to lead. Now, maybe not lead invite, but there's maybe like a second tier lead invite. I don't know. I think something different. I'd love to see. That's my just to offer an alternative, and then other tournaments like London Invite and Windmill will Blossom. That's my hot take and different thing. I appreciate alternative thing. I also appreciate that I'm a minority maybe in this and have to
Uh-huh.
accept that. But I like to plead my case anyway.
Yeah, I'm curious. You've probably been talking about this to a lot of people. Have you found that most people actually like the new system in your exploits talking
So
around?
I think so, but maybe
But
like
they're all wrong.
I think for elite teams it's probably better. I think bubble teams, if you ended up on the wrong side of the bubble last year, you might not like it. I think there's more British teams maybe I've talked to that didn't like it.
Uh-huh.
I think maybe they liked their little qualification and internal things.
Yeah. Well, they didn't have to travel at
And it
all.
was
They just got to play regionals in the UK, didn't have to go international even once, and that's not something most countries get either way. So it was unfair for them to begin with. Um, Other teams had to travel internationally for their regionals. So
it's a carbon footprint, Ravi. Carbon, we're saving the environment, you know.
all right.
I don't know.
Let's finish up with that. If people have more comments in the chat, we'll maybe come back to this at the end of the show. But we're already 40 minutes in. Let's go through the rankings and see how Tom's Tourney, Vienna Spring Break, and Warsaw invites impacted things. So we'll start here in the mixed division. Let's wait for Nemo to get here. And yeah, it's an interesting thing so far. Actually, before we go into the rankings, I want to show the connections because I think this is will explain things quite a bit. Mixed is still in three kind of bubbles. So over here you see leftovers, out, forehand. So this is all I believe it's the Warsaw Invite and the Timisoara teams are over here. Over here we have, I think this was it Lund, the spring tour over there, and then down here we have the Padova spring tour team. So you can't really compare teams from these bubbles yet. With Elite Invite, I think these two bubbles will be connected, but these guys over here, I think, don't get connected until Warsaw Summer Tour. So some teams in this little bubble in the East might be a bit inflated. So I'll take that, and they might be inflated all the way through the year. So if you hate algorithms that are weird to follow, you're really going to hate this, Liam. But because of that, forehands, as they have gone 2-0 at Warsaw Invite and won out on some teams from that Timisoara bubble, they're now sitting in first place with a 588 ranking. Reading has dropped a spot because of that. Reading and Mosquitoes, Glasgow, TC Taucher all dropped a little bit. I don't see, the teams with 2 games in, those are mainly like out from the Timisoara and the Warsaw Invite. But aside from that, not many big changes in mixed. Anything you want to talk about aside from this weird forehands being in first place thing?
So just to confirm, I understand. I think basically the mixed rankings are going to be skewed until summer invite. Is that what you're kind of saying to a certain degree? Certainly, teams like forehands,
Yeah.
you probably can't read into it a whole amount
These
until
Polish
they're
teams,
connected.
forehands, Oxley out, and I believe Heroes Flying Disc, Transylvania, it'll be hard to judge them within the rest of them until Summer Tour Warsaw. Yeah, I think that's what it's going to be. Sadly, there were no Elite Invite teams from there last year, so that's kind of why there's no way to connect them, and there's not really any connective tournaments happening that I can see yet. Maybe some will pop up later.
Yeah, so that's fine.
Yeah.
I think it's people, as long as people understand that or understand why they're ranked low or high, just to not really read into it that much at the moment in mixed. But
Yeah.
I guess in the other divisions, we're starting to see it pan out a bit more.
Yeah, and we already mentioned in the last show, Reading doing really well. Mosquitoes also performing very well, getting the win over TFC early on in that tournament, pushing them up to a pretty high ranking. I think Glasgow probably pretty happy to still be up this high, but we'll see where things shake out after Elite Invite in a couple weeks. I think that'll start to move these teams around a bit more to where you expect them to be. If we go down to the edge here, so from the top 16, out of the top 16, we have right now Newcastle Brown and Disco Bolo. But again, I wouldn't read this too much, as I know that there are teams from the Elite Invite that haven't put themselves in yet. So probably once they get in, more teams will get pushed down. So I would imagine that the line will probably be more up here somewhere for who's in the top 16, who's out. But for now, you also see the top 24 and out, as there's now a Div 2. That's also a cutoff. Right now, that is Colorado and Thundering Herd. If anybody in the chat wants to look at anything more in detail, please put it in there, and we'll take a look. I see a question from Advanced Ultimate Coaching. We'll get to that at the end of the show because that's not relevant to the mixed ranking itself right now. So I think another surprise here, Seski super low. Looks like losing Galon Salon, Mael Barentin is definitely hurting that team. So we'll see where they end up throughout the season. I do think they're still pretty strong, but right now not in that top 16, which is very far away from their semifinal finish last year at the UCF.
Do you think any team will win a wild card and not finish in the top 16 ranking in mixed?
We can take a quick look at, I think the Elite Invite winner will definitely be in the top 16, but we can look at the summer tours. So there's 3 of them. For Heilbronn, this is the list of teams we got: BN1, Colorado, Rangers, Deep Space, Disconnection, Lemmings. I think TFC Talcott. This one for sure will have a team in the top 16 winning it. Probably it's going to be Deep Space or TFC, but even if like Rangers or Disconnection win, or on some surprise win, that they'll also probably be in the top 16 as well. So that one, not a worry. Let's go to Sterling. We've got Glasgow, Heck, Reading. Yeah, I think this one also, with Glasgow, Heck, and Reading in there, not really a risk of a team outside the top 16 qualifying. And Warsaw, we got Four Hands, which is right now the top ranked team in Europe. Actually, Disco Bolo. Let's see, Flow, traditionally pretty good. RJP Savage, which is going to Elite Invite. We haven't seen them yet. Also a pretty good team. This one, maybe a team could sneak in, but I would guess if they are beating Savage and Disco Bolo, who have a pretty good season so far, and beating Four Hands, who are right now top of Europe, to get there, they'll probably end up being in the top 16 anyways. Oh, Tartu's here. Sorry, Tartu's here. Yeah, this I think Mix is pretty safe from a top 16 team winning a home.
It's interesting, the spread of teams at summer invites, and looking at them, it seems like a really good spread that actually it feels fair.
There's good. So there's like a couple good Elite Invite level teams at every summer tour. So
yeah, that's good.
All right. With that said, let's anything on mixed that you want to dig into, or questions about, or teams you're curious about where they ended up?
Not also really. I guess it hasn't changed much since last time. There wasn't any mixed tournaments this weekend. So
yeah. So let's go to Open, where some things have definitely changed. So again, here I'll start in the connections, because I think that's interesting. It looks all connected at the moment, but I believe I can pull this one out. There is still 2 bubbles now. So we had the Timisoara, and I think they added some teams from Vienna Spring Break that are now in this bubble over here. And now we have a connection of Padova and Grenoble that are connected through teams like UFO that are now connecting both. Red Bulls played a couple. Rat Track played Isno from Grenoble. So there's now a few connective tissues between this one. You see through UFO, who played Alba, who played Chak, who played Krut, who then played a couple teams from Padova. There's now another kind of connective tissue placed there. But these teams, of course, don't have very many games in them yet. But yeah, that's where we're at. So again, comparing this big bubble to this small bubble, you can't really fairly compare those teams. But within those bubbles, things are okay, and we'll see where things land at the moment. So right now,
you're the connector, right? So
you're the connector.
UFO. Yeah, tell me about that. And like, so how many games did you play? How many ranked games did I want to know if your tactics changed or line calling changed for those games.
So okay, so if you look here with our games, we can put everything here. I should round that number off, but you can see that at Spring Tour Grenoble, we played our set of 6 games. And then at Tom's Tourney, we actually had 4 ranked games. So we actually have our 10 games in here. 2-8 record, not looking so good right now. And we had a similar roster for both tournaments. I think we had a slightly bigger roster for Tom's, though we're missing one of our O-line players for the Red Bulls game. So I think that one we maybe would have done a bit better if he had showed up. He couldn't get there in time. So that one we're missing. We did Titan lines at Tom's. We had some EUCS, some non-EUCS. We did Titan lines a bit in the EUCS games, but yeah, aside from that, we played quite okay. I think the game against Rat Track's a pretty good one for us. You see, they're actually doing quite well in the rankings. We lost on Universe. That was definitely a winnable game for us. Bristol was a tough one. That's the one where I got hurt. Our teammate broke his arm, and another team sprained their ankle. We were up 7-5 in that game, and I think without those injuries, it would have been way tighter. So I think this is, let's say, hurting Grenoble, Grenoble, because I think this is not representative of us because of injuries. But that's part of sport, and that's going to happen. Any other questions you have about that, or did I answer pretty much what you wanted to know?
Yeah, I just wanted you to say that you were hurting Grenoble. I kind of knew what the answer was. I
Yeah,
just
we hurt
wanted you
Grenoble, definitely. Sorry to
So if you don't
Grenoble.
qualify, you can blame Ravi and his wanky arm. No, I kind of knew that was the situation. But I was interested to see about. I'm going to be playing with Pelt this season, so it'll be my first time doing it. I didn't play last year, and
Hmm.
we're going to Wind Farm, and we might have 2 or 3 ranked games there. And
Hmm.
we're bringing some beginners, but as far as I'm concerned, they're not playing in the ranked games. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Genuinely, if you like, and we're hoping to get 2 or 3 ranked games, and we'll probably
Hmm.
need them, and we're going to stack lines.
Yeah.
And I'd say that I was just wondering what that experience was like from your aspect, because I suppose with 4 games you probably couldn't do that as much. Maybe if you knew you only had 2 games or something like that,
Yeah.
you might
I'll,
have
I'll
done it. And
say,
I'm sure the opposition is doing the same thing. So
yeah, I'll say one teammate. I'm not going to mention names, but I know that one, let's say, lower level roster teammate was a bit perplexed in the Red Bulls games. That was our first ranked game of the tournament. That we were down like 13-9 or something, and we threw in a power line to try and get a break. And maybe that's not something you do in a regular game, but we're like, hey, it's close to the end of the game. We want to grab as many points as we can. And he didn't understand that. He's like, why am I not getting playing time now? Like, if I'm not getting playing time in this moment, when would I be getting playing time? And I had to explain to him, yeah, in other games that aren't ECS, you probably would, but here not, and blah blah blah. And yeah, that was something that was tough for me as a captain to get across and get everyone to buy into. But we eventually, when I explained it, he understood, and we had to move forward that way. Yeah,
yeah, so development of roster hurt in that situation. Okay, yeah, good to know. When am I?
I'm not sure.
But
Maybe our power line got some more reps that was good for that development as well. So we'll go both ways. But let's look
yeah,
at the ranking here. So Chalk in first place, Clapham in second. And this is a big one. If you looked at the ranking from last time, first place, Quixotes and Isno were in first place. And you'll see here, something I've added this year is the delta from the previous ranking. Quixotes and Isno are now at 11th and 12th. They've dropped 11 spots. Quixotes have dropped 11 spots. Isno's dropped 9 spots. So yes, we were hurting the Grenoble, but Isno were also at Tom's, and their ranked games probably also hurt Grenoble. Maybe a bit less than we did, but because they dropped lower, they didn't drop as much as Quixotes did. But yeah, there can see some big drop offs.
I like the Delta. Thank you
Yeah.
for adding that. That's a good thing.
Jet Set here dropping 15. They're the ones that got hurt the most. They did play us directly, so sorry about that. But funnily enough, that we only dropped 10 spots, but we did drop 227 ranking points, and Jet Set dropped 214 ranking points. So they dropped fewer ranking points, but because the top is a bit more clustered, they dropped more ranking spots. That's always something you gotta play around with. Mooncatchers sticking around. They moved up 1 spot, even though they didn't play. They didn't count Toms. Hurt, Clapham, and Chalk only played Tom, so they entered in. You see, they don't have a delta because it's their first ranking. Lafota freezing at 5th somehow. um, and yeah, I think let's go down to the bottom here. 16-17. We've got Frisbee Cup Barcelona and Ketchup towing that line. And for in or out of the second division, we've got Outseaters and Red Bulls. So that's where teams are right now. Again, I think Chevron's not in yet. I think there are a few more elite invite teams that aren't in yet. So probably everything's going to be pushed down. But yeah, Heidi's sitting here at 8th, even though they beat Lafota early. That wasn't, the big loss to Moon at the end of their spring tour, also bringing them down a bit. Anything you want to look at more closely here in the rankings, Liam?
It's hard and open. I think there's like the teams at the top are qualifying. They might switch around a little bit in terms of Clapham, Mooncatchers, and Czech. I think we're already seeing the top teams. Interesting to see Hut up there.
Yeah.
It will, because Tom Blassman wasn't there. He's going to be playing with them probably later on the season. I think they're going to do really well. I'm excited to see is it Ben and Tom will be playing with them properly. They didn't play with them last season, but I think they will be playing with them this season. I think
Ben
they're
is, from what I know, Ben is playing the full season. Tom is only UCF, so he won't be there for the
yeah,
qualification parts, but coming in for UCF. That's my understanding.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm happy to see that because I remember I felt so weird last year watching them on Moon while like so we're in the quarters and like
Yeah.
they're not a million miles off, as you can see this being a semis team and doing really well. And I I could never imagine being there and my club team that like almost started and grew were also in the quarters. So
Hmm.
I'm glad to see him doing that, and I think it adds more competition to the open division, which has been a little bit dull at times in terms
Hmm.
of competitive teams. So that's exciting. I feel the open division more than any to have like a massive amount of bubble teams. And
Hmm.
it's just like
Yeah.
so slide down is actually the
This
catch up
bit is the
and the
most interesting bit.
Barcelona,
Yeah.
yeah. It is gonna be like 1 point in one game to decide things. And like I find that so interesting, you stacking a line when you're losing a game and you're gonna lose it, but just to try and get that one break, and that could be the difference for you or any club.
Yeah.
Surprised me one tribe so low down. Maybe we'll find out why. But I remember them beating Ranelagh. They love beating Ranelagh. So why are they so low? Can you tell me that?
Yeah, let's take a look at one tribe. Let's see here. One tribe. Let's look at I think the easiest way is to look at their plot. Um, they've only played their spring tour. So let's see what's raising them up, what's pulling them down. So they did beat Ronald 15-12, but as you see, that game is quite away from their average. Their average game is around here. Like let's say beating Red Bulls on Universe, that's about where they are average wise. And like I said, Red Bulls was 25th in the ranking, I believe. So they're just a Universe point win over the 25th best team. And yeah, they beat Ranelagh, but that's not really the best. Their worst game here, they lost to Costa Rica Grandes 15-7. It's a pretty big difference. Losing the Heidi's 14-9, losing the Mooncatchers 15-9. So, and just beating Hardfish, which is a team, I don't know where they're ranked, but probably somewhere down in the 30s or upper 20s somewhere, only 13-12. So, again, yeah, have a great game against Ranelagh. Love beating Ranelagh, but other games, I think, around an 18th place performance.
Yeah, okay, that's probably fair as to where they are. A little bit surprised to see them there.
Hmm.
Um, but I guess that makes sense. Yeah, no, that's
Yeah, I
all
think
makes sense. Yeah, that's
interesting to see Echo here. This is the new Vienna combination team. We were curious where they were going to end up as a team, and still seems not quite UCF level. Maybe they'll improve over the season as the Big Easy and Forward come together.
when we get to talk about the cool stuff at Tom's, like Italy 24 and Scottish women, and do
We'll
we
do
talk about it at the end?
we'll do that at the end. We'll do that at the end. We'll talk about the rankings
Cool,
first.
cool,
We'll
cool.
go to the end. And again, if anybody in the chat wants to look at a team more closely, this is the time to ask questions. Don't see much there in the chat right now, so I think we'll just move on to the women's. We're already almost an hour in, so
Yeah,
let's.
yeah. Last thing on Smog, they probably didn't have. They're in Division Two. They probably didn't have a ranked game. I could see them winning that Poland invite, that summer tour. Smog are good.
Yeah,
They
let's look
have
at
Nick Williams, who's a world game player. I think, yeah, that's gonna be a really fun, exciting tournament. You see, catch up is on the bubble. Why they ranked 16th, 17th there.
yeah.
There's a lot of teams right on the bubble with this.
Yeah,
I kind of
I
joke the
think
Dublin Frisbee Sevens is like, hey, if we're doing bad, do you want to take the best three pelt players and we'll just go over with you guys? And I don't know. Yeah, then I don't think they'd win with their current squad. But like, if you're any of these teams right now, you surely got to be, hey
eyeing
guys,
up.
this is if you're a bubble team, this is a massive opportunity.
I
So
think Freesbees are another
I
one that could steal this one. They're actually very young, very athletic. We played them in Grenoble. Um, we played them last game of the tournament, and I think that's where they really got us because they're super young and fit. And if we had they beat us, but I think we would have if we had played them earlier in the tournament, we would have been a bit closer. So I could see them having a lot of gas in the tank left if they make it to that final game compared to probably their opposition. Um, but yeah, Smog, Freesbees, catch up. I think a lot of these teams will be eyeing up this tournament to say, hey, we can win this one. That's how we're going to get in. Um, cool. Anything else for open?
don't know.
All right. Let's go to women's. Advanced Ultimate Coaching saying Solent or dark horses. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see about that. I'm not so sure from what I've seen so far that I quite buy that story. All right. In women's, we see the deltas here. Shout moving up to first place. Crit moving up to second. I think Tom's results helping them out. Iceni coming down from first place a little bit. They didn't count Tom's, but I think the way connectivity worked. We'll actually look at the connectivity here to see what it looks like. I think is everything connected here now. No, there's still. Oh yeah, there's the Vienna Spring Break. Vienna Spring Break is its own little thing. The two spring tours are connected now. I think with decent amount of connectivity, but the Vienna Spring Break teams are in their own little bubble. So again, the East hanging out there. So 3SB winning out that little bubble over there in fourth place. We got the BFD Cheetahs. I wonder if that's going to survive. They only have one game in. What was their one game? I'm curious about that. They beat Queen Kong 14-9, 15-9. So we'll see if the Cheetahs can, second team from Bologna, hold on to that one. Moon Cup, Smog, Sharks from Barcelona. Tequila down at 9th. I would have thought they would be a bit higher, but they're there. Yaka down at 10th. We definitely should dig into that a little bit to see what's going on with Yaka. And down at the cutoff, we got Hot Mess Express and Queen Kong. And down at the Div 2 cutoff, we got LMU and Box. So what do you see in this women's division, aside from Yaka being crazy low?
Yeah, Yaka's a shock. I'm glad to see Sharks there. I think they were really impressive at Tom's.
Mm-hmm.
Love to see Luna balling out, one of our workers for LTTV, Dalila, some really good players. I think we're seeing a lot of Spanish teams in all divisions kind of making that transition from being great beach teams to being great grass teams. And it's really cool to see. Sharks were, a really fun team to watch at Tom's Tourney, so shout out to them. Anything else there? East Block, I think we'll talk about Vienna Spring Break in a bit. Understandably, I think a lot of teams at Vienna Spring Break had their rosters rated by elite teams, whether that's 3SB or East Block, or even I think Box lost their coach Indian. I think I'm not sure who's coaching this year, but yeah, I think those teams are hurting a little bit.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad. East Block are such a cool up and coming team. I think obviously Slusta has gone to Hut, and then I think they have another player gone to
There's a 3SB player on
Berlin?
Jinx. I know that.
Yeah, there's a few. It seems the checks are just up for sale, aren't they? They're really like the old transfer window. But then again, like we're going to see a lot of them are probably looking at world clubs and targeting that and starting that process. And I think we didn't see. I think the last two world clubs. I don't think there's any women's teams in the top 8. Kind of vaguely going off memory here, and I think maybe the likes of Hut and Shout or Jinx can hopefully change that. So in some ways, might be losing out on East Block being like a top 4 team or being an elite team, but maybe we'll see the rise of European women's ultimate a little more on the world stage in that kind of these stacked rosters. But yeah, we got to dig into Yaka as well.
Yeah, so it says there's a question in the chat that Yaka and Iceni both lost the same exact amount of ranking points. See, the delta is negative 166.88. What I think is that the reason for that is that the only real connector from the Leicester Spring Tour that played at Tom's was Gentle Women, and I'm guessing they both won by the same score margin there. Yaka actually didn't play Gentle Women, but I think it's the same thing that they're probably connected in terms of the algorithm in a very similar way to that team, by the way it all shakes out. So it is quite curious that they lost by the same exact amount of points, because I don't see that game here. Am I missing it? No, there's no game with Gentle here. So that would have been my assumption for there of why that is the case. But quite curious that they lost the same amount of ranking points. Iceni, Smog, and Yaka all the same amount. Maybe I'll have to ask the guy that really understands the algorithm why that's exactly the amount of points, because none of them played at the tour, but all of them were just connected by that one Gentle team. I think once more connectivity comes between those two tours, you'll see it, because I think if you look at the connections here, you see Gentle is the one little thread connecting this tour to this tour. And there I'm pretty sure that Gentle had a weaker roster at Tom's than at their spring tour. So that means that all these teams that played the spring tour with Gentle probably are a bit underrated for the moment, but once more connectivity gets between these two tours, that'll clean itself up a little bit. Let's take a look at Yaka and see why they lost 5 ranking points, 5 spots, and they're 10th in the ranking right now. So which of their results are really pulling them down? Here, they have a 15-7 win against Horizon. That's their worst result, and sadly, that's 1 point too few to make that a blowout game. They should have really tried to get that to be 15-6, because at 15-7, it's going to count no matter what. If they had made that 15-6, probably once they got more games in, this game wouldn't be there. Their average would move up. Second lowest game is the win against Örebro, and they have their best game is a 14-9 win against Spice. So doesn't look like the worst set of results for them, but at the moment, yeah, just hanging out in 10th place. That lost Iceni there as well. Go ahead.
They didn't count Tom's
No.
Yaka?
No, they were there to party and have a good time and not count it.
Yeah. Maybe they do better when they party. I would have thought, I was going to think the Hut game was the one that cost them, because I know it was kind of, they lost by a bit in the final, but it is that the Horizon team, is it that we said? That just feels, see, this is the situation where I'm like, this shouldn't hurt a team. Like, and I understand you kind of create the blowout rule, but then there's a certain cutoff where it does count, and like it just feels odd that that score is damaging their ranking as much as it is when they quite easily beat the team. And then if they'd won by 1 more point, they could be 4 or 5 spots higher. That again, maybe there's a way of changing that, and like you probably understand that criticism, I think, from your nodding. So yeah, this is one of the little flaws. Like, they're going to qualify, I would imagine. It's not going to be a big burden, and like there's lots of flaws to every system, so there's always going to be pros and cons, but that just does seem a little unfair.
Yep. And I don't know if they know that the system that well. Like, I've told my teams that if you're playing 14-6, whether you're the team on the bottom side of that or the top side of that, you got to play that like universe point. You got to put in, if you're the bottom, you want that 15-7 to count, so you want to get that one. And if you're on the top side of that, you want it to get not count, so you want to score 15-6. Like, that's, teams need to realize it's a very weird quirk of the system that's like that there is a strict cutoff. But yeah, this I get it, and I agree that this is kind of a shame that a 15-7 result is what's pulling them down. Like, as you said, at the moment they're still qualifying, and I think when they get more games in, that game will be a smaller portion of their average. So I'm sure they'll go up a few more spots when they play Elite or whatever. But yeah, shame for right now. I don't think we'll see Yaka finishing at 10th by the end of the season. So I wouldn't worry about that.
Yeah, Yaka have been great actually this season. I really like the kind of youth taking over. Chloe Olivier, Swan Lacoste Lefer. It's really exciting to see. I think they're going to be a really great team for the next 10 years. I think they've given those youthful players the big roles now, and yeah, I think they're going to qualify. I think the rank is going to bother them too much. I think they're going to be a really great team, and it's cool to see them investing in their youth quite a lot.
All right. I'm looking to see if there's any questions about this. We already had the Iceni and Yako with additional loss in ranking points. We mentioned that already. I don't see any questions about teams in particular. Do you have anything you want to dive into, or do you want to look a bit more at results of tournaments and talk a little bit about how what that means about the European landscape? Forget all these ranking algorithms. Let's talk about the tournament results.
Let's slide down to the bubble teams at the moment. I like looking. It's any more interesting. Those teams. Anyone surprised to be not in?
So I thought Heidi Synergy looked quite okay, and they're below a team like Hot Mess Express. That's a bit of a surprise to me. And Gentle still being up there, even though they didn't have the best results so far. But again, I think there's a couple teams missing from the rankings that'll show up after lead invite.
There is teams missing. What's any notable teams that aren't there?
Let's take a look here. I got elite invites. 3SP's already in. Shouts in. Ketchup. Was Ketchup in? I think so. Fabulous. Crit. Iceni. Jinx Midnight not in yet. And Moon Cup.
Okay, yeah.
So it's mainly only Jinx Midnight, I think. Because Ketchup's here. Fabulous was definitely there. Yeah, Fabulous is here. So at the moment, it's only Jinx Midnight that's not in there yet.
And
So maybe this
those
cutoff is not so inaccurate. You could look at it just one spot up. So right now it might be Gentle Hot Mess Express as the cutoff. And down here, LMU Gravity Women as the cutoff for Div 2 at the moment.
I think those Vienna Spring Break teams that are in there, like Box and Catch Up, am I saying that they are kind of out of the loop a little bit, so we
Yeah.
can't really
Yeah.
base their rankings there. Like it's not wholly relevant their current ranking.
Yeah.
Am I fair
And
in saying
BFD
that?
Cheetahs having a single game in, that's probably not,
Yeah.
that'll
Okay.
change a bit as well.
So it's not a very accurate landscape at the moment.
No, not yet. That's early season.
Not yet.
Elite Invite will help to clean things up a lot, I think. But yeah, I'm not sure what does a Cheetahs season look like, because I'm curious how long they can stay up here. They have Tom's Tourney and Summer Tour Rimini, so they're not going to get anything there until Summer Tour Rimini. I don't even know if they're going to get 10 games in, so I wouldn't worry too much with BFD Cheetahs. So maybe keep that in mind looking at this second BFD team out there. All right. Anything else you want to look at, or should we start talking about some results?
Yeah.
All right. What do you want to talk about? Let's put the ranking away. I'll go back to our two heads. Let's just quickly, we're already an hour in. We're not going to talk too long, but we'll look at Tom's Tourney and Vienna Spring Break and maybe Warsaw Invite. What'd you see at Tom's Tourney from the two divisions that you want to talk about?
It was fun, and I actually really enjoy watching national teams play club teams. It can be this fun dynamic. I watched the GB Masters women. Bring up the result. Can you have the result there? I think they beat Moon Cup. It looked like I wasn't actually couldn't see the scoreboard, but it looked like they beat them with a few breaks in Universe from them all running to the pitch. That's what it looked like. And yeah, Amelia Durbin was. I think she was playing with Conor McHale's jersey tied up in like a little bow with the 88, and that was kind of cute. Shout out to her, Lulu Boyd. Irish woman playing with GB, which was hard to watch, but yeah, I think I should have called that game that they beating Moon Cup. Moon Cup, they also have a gigantic roster, and it's kind of hard to know how they're going to do this year. It seems like they're going to tournaments, but maybe not their strongest players, but also still having like a lot of players. That's an interesting dynamic. Staying with the women's division, super fun final. I actually enjoyed it, even though it wasn't that close to the end. I thought both teams played well. Interesting to see how I say it different every time. Grush. Let's just say Grush. Get wrecked ultimate team. Interesting to see how they do at Worlds next year. I think that's kind of like a big build-up, isn't it? It feels like that. I think they can get better. I still think they probably turn over a tiny bit more than they need to, but like when you have floor, cool arts downfield, and I thought Fiona Myrna was awesome on the D line. I think she's the best force in Europe. Fiona. Okay. She's got a pretty sick foot block in that final. And if you actually watch, I think she's marking Swan Lacoste Lefebvre. I think every time she tried to break the mark, it was like blocked or an incompletion. If you ever want to learn how to put on a good force, watch her. It's actually pretty class. What did you make of that final?
Yeah, I actually didn't catch that one. I was playing during the final, haven't had a chance to watch it yet. Yeah. It was
good. It was good. It was yeah, I do think like in some ways the top women's teams in Europe are really like rising above the rest of times, the kind of top 4 or 5. Which like kind of makes me a little bit sad with the European scene. I do like having a nice spread and everyone rises together, having a very competitive division. It still is very competitive at the top and the middle, but like as you say, you've seen maybe East Block and 3SB slide off a little bit. I still think those teams could finish like 6th or 7th, but I think they've had a little bit of talent drain. But notably, that might help it and more exciting when we get to Worlds next year. They're going to be a lot of fun to watch. And yeah, I think someone highlighted, I think a lot of European teams lost that crossover to get the top 8. I can see them winning. I think they play a lot of like hooking it to Floor or Menard or Fiona Myrna, and it kind of works because they're like just exceptional talents. I don't know if that's going to work against the US teams as much. But yeah, they're a really good team. Really good team.
I think the shock for me was Jinx Midnight losing to Yaka in the semis, but I don't know if Jinx partied a bit harder on on the party night than they did because it's the early morning semifinal. But especially Yaka was missing their France Masters players. I think that's probably why they weren't counting it. I know Rasta and Nanu, those players were playing with the France
I,
Masters.
hot take. Maybe they look better without them. Is that a bit of a hot take? Maybe I really enjoy teams like giving young players big roles.
Yeah.
So I actually didn't realize that because I saw Rasta Mondiu on the sideline.
Yeah.
I thought maybe is she coaching this year or something? I guess she was playing with the French Masters team. But they looked really good. I know the scoreline probably doesn't look that way, but like that Grut team is
Pretty good.
superstars, and like a lot of the young players were doing really well. Chloe Olivia had a great game. I thought they were really good, and that I think they're going to only get better. So I think maybe the youth kind of showing they can do it.
They should maybe take a bigger role and let the old people play a bit more on the backup side. We'll see. We'll see what they do with that. And then for the open division, yeah, I did see that final, and that was crazy. Those Italian kids are fast. They're so good at throwing quickly. They operate like their clock speed in their brain is at like a different speed than other people. And Clapham really looked like a Masters team in that in that game against them comparatively. I mean, they were playing at two completely different speeds, both in terms of how quickly they can move the disc and how quickly they were running. Didn't look like the same division at all.
Yeah, I think it's the big story of the tournament, or the open division anyway. I said this to like our Masters coaches. I think the Italian U24 team played the best offense I've ever seen. And it sounds like a wild statement, but I honestly do that. If you were to build your offense, because I don't think they're better individually than the teams they played.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think I was coming into this year, it's like, oh, they don't have Rossi, Brazazi, these kind of like standout athletes. And I don't think anyone's particularly like that. But like, if you watch them play, they rarely hold a disc for more than 2 seconds, any of them. So they move very fast, create flow. They're very good at breaking the mark. Nearly every time they throw and go.
Mm-hmm.
They hit the under, they're looking to get that handler up rushing pass, or if they swing, they're looking to get the continuation actually from their handler space. I thought their movement was like 10 out of 10. And like
they also throw really
offense,
hard. Like I think a lot of teams need to learn to throw faster, and like the pace at which they throw matches the speed at which they're running and giving it going with it. Like it's just really impressive all around.
Yeah, I think a lot of moon catchers, a lot of Clapham, a lot of them are doing like big lane cutters, and it's a bit more slow, and you're kind of staring downfield for long, and you're resetting. They're just like dynamic flowing machine on offense. Defense is really good as well. Like they do a lot of force middle, which Italian teams like to do. They defend well as a team. They did a bit of zone and switching. Their quick transitions, I thought, are amazing. Like Italian teams, we played BFD in Division 2, whatever it was, which had Tognetti, Ventroli, Laffy. I don't know why. There was a bit of we got a bit shafted by them. But anyway, like they do the same thing of like quick transition, and like they do that so well. On D lines, they just quickly, there's so many points, they got like break opportunities, and it's just pick it up. Don't even set up any kind of offense, catch the defense on the hop. And like, I think tactically, I've never seen such a good team. Genuinely, it sounds like a crazy statement to make, but like to go and beat, Czech, who had brought a good roster, Clapham, who, looked good until they were playing the Italians twice. But yeah, I didn't think they were going to be competitive at U24s in terms of like beating
they're missing
USA
all
and
the
stuff like
stars,
that.
right? That we knew, but looks like I think they're better than they've
They look
looked.
better.
Yeah,
They look a lot better than they did with Barzazzi and Rossi. It's actually very similar players. Like Simonazzi is back. I didn't realize how many of them are back. Or Paul Talk is his name, is it? Like like they're such experienced players already, and like so good at breaking the mark. Everyone can throw. Real like just hogs in a wheel kind of offense. Everyone's touching the disc, and yeah, I thought it was exceptional. I think if anyone's looking to base their offense or like study a team and copying them, the Italians, and it's cool to see like
there's a point
Panetti
of
and
like
Laffy.
I think like 3-3 or 4-3 right when they start to get their lead, that they play like a 2-3-2 zone, and it's just like a masterclass of how to play a 2-3-2 zone. And Clapham like had no options, like literally just looked like so panicked, had no idea what to do. And that's Clapham. That's not those are like some of the best players in Europe that have been playing this game forever, and they just I'm gonna, we're trying to play that zone, and I'm gonna definitely be showing my team the clips of that point over and over again. Like, this is how you do it. Maybe we need to get a lot faster. Maybe we need to get a lot more experience of whatever. But like, they really showed every aspect of the game, throwing skill, speed, tactics. Like you said, just a complete ultimate team.
Yeah, and like it's cool to see Tourney. Obviously, Davide, I think Lafiu's doing some coaching as well, but they're very good, the Italians and Bologna, for getting younger players coaching very early, and like they look like great coaches, and they're not old players. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it just kind of feed into the system. And you like look at Clapham comparatively, like you don't really see that. You don't really see that kind of integration of a system of you came through this youth system, now you coach youth very early, and it's kind of like they're great tactics, but they're also building great coaches as well.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not just Davide. It looks like all of them. It's not about being a great player. They're getting all their players to be great coaches from an early age. I think that's why they're so good at their tactics. I don't think anything that interesting happening in the Open Division otherwise.
Well, I just
Yeah,
like, well,
that's what
since I'll quickly mention that the U24 Belgium Italy opener game where Belgium beat that Italy team. We talk about Italy being the best team out there. Belgium's the only team that beat them. And I think Belgium is more the star power team. They've got like these,
Yeah,
they got Tobe, Soph, and still, I think Italy's by far the better team, depth wise, tactics wise, all that other stuff. But if it ends up being a semifinal between Belgium and Italy, and those three stars, or like a couple stars on Belgium, just have an amazing game, they could also take that one. Like they're a kind of different type of team, but still pretty impressive stuff. Both teams getting to the semifinals, and yeah, also looking pretty good. So I'm excited about the European Open side on U24s, and then I think I also seen for the mixed side, Czech U24 apparently look really strong. France U24 going to be pretty strong. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Europeans do in U24s this year.
yeah. I think Czech and France and mixed. Am I right? Are going to
Yeah,
be competitive. It's always nice to have kind of one or two European teams in the draw that you feel like can go deep or make a final.
yeah.
I think they're the teams. I didn't think Italy, but now I do. I think I thought Belgium before with the likes of Tobe and stuff, but yeah, it's the Italians are exceptional. I think they deserve that applause.
All right, and Vienna spring break. Any notes you had from that one?
I actually asked John Dock to send me some voice notes, and he sent me about a 40-minute podcast on everything that happened in it. They were short of words. Yeah, I wonder if I can remember it all now. I probably can't. Laura can also send me some notes. They did a good job of the coverage there. I think they had a lot of games in a row. But I
Yeah,
think the story looking at women's is like 3SB are back in the sense of Rahel and Sarah
yeah.
coming back into the fold. I think they're missing one of their best players. One of their best players has gone to
Jinx.
Jinx or
Yeah,
Lafod. Yeah.
yeah.
So that's a little tough, but they won the qualification for world clubs. I think that was somehow happened as part of this event. I'm a little unsure, but they beat East Block, and that happened over the weekend anyway. That they're
Okay.
won the world spot, which they could be two. Who knows? But they beat East Block. Obviously, East Block have a little bit of a talent drain, um, which is unfortunate. Change of coaches this year. They keep changing between give go offense minded coaches. I think it's Lou Burgess is
Yeah.
coaching this year. But yeah, catch up doing okay. Again, missing. Yeah, I think who was it? No, sorry, Vienna Box have their coach changed as well.
Mm-hmm.
Indian, who was a great coach. I think they did well at ECF last year. I think that's a big loss actually, losing Indian as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
I think they might have lost one or two players as well. But anything in the women's division that you saw?
Yeah, just 3SB dominance. I mean, I think they crushed
Yeah.
everyone pretty much at that tournament, and I thought catch-up women were a pretty strong side, but didn't have it against this 3SB team. So showing that, yeah, I think the Tosnarova is really fully back. I know they did play last year a bit as well, but this team is still very good. I think it's good for them to show. Everyone was talking about East Block, hyping East Block, and then East Block lose their star player, and all of a sudden 3SB is like, yeah, you know what? We're still the queens of the Czech land for now, and especially if they lose Tlista. So yeah, showing that they're the best of that sort of Eastern European bloc. And once that gets connected, I'm curious to see where they're going to end up with the rest of Europe. I think they're definitely, they could easily be a quarters level team again, and where they can really push the likes of, Jinx, Krutz, Shout, I think are in that conversation. Yaka, hopefully are in that conversation. I don't know if they're still in that conversation or not. Maybe they will be. So maybe there's one spot kind of hanging out there for semis in the women's division. I think those other three are pretty solidly in my opinion. But we'll see.
I think catch up could still qualify in women's.
Yeah.
I know it wasn't that close of a game against 3SB, but I think when that tournament connects with the others, that might not actually be that bad of a result.
Mm-hmm.
And then open. Let me get the
MUC
open
winning.
results.
MUC beating, I believe, catch up in the final on Universe or close to Universe. I did catch the end of that one. MUC not playing UCS because TFC is. So still showing that they're a decent side. I know that was a controversial decision in Munich to go full mixed, but last year they made that decision and now they're going for it fully for Worlds. But MUC is still a good team. Used to be like always on the bubble of like quarters level at UCF. Never really fully performed as well as they did wanted to at UCF. I felt like. Still always beat Ranelagh, I think. Was it MUC that Ranelagh could never beat?
I remember them losing in a game that didn't matter anyway. So, but I think catch up, they lost the Universe in the final, as far as I can tell, against
MUC. Yeah.
MUC. I think they're both open and women's are kind of bubble teams, aren't they?
MUC is not playing.
Kind of
not playing UCS.
Sorry, catch up open. I mean, sorry,
catch up open. Yeah. Catch up open. Yes. Yeah.
I think they're kind of one of those bubble teams as well.
Yeah.
I think looking at Terrible Monkeys, they probably made it very hard for them to qualify or Uprising. There are some other teams that are competing in the rankings. Catch up open. I think one of the better players, Fisher, isn't there? I think he's playing with them this season.
Yep.
Again, they're probably still in the mix. I think the other two have maybe hurt themselves a little bit in terms of qualifying. But yeah, interesting that the tournaments always happen the same weekend. It was weird the way Tom's they said it was a bank holiday, so then they didn't really play on Sunday. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I know that May 1st, Labor Day was the holiday. So they usually try to have the tournament happen around May 1st. And then if May 1st, that's it. Tom's always has done that. And so if May 1st was on the Thursday, then they have it Thursday to Saturday. Because, but I know the Netherlands doesn't get May 1st off. So it was, for us, we had to take 2 days off. We actually my friends and I took the whole week off because we played Spring Tour the week before in Grenoble and just kind of gradually made our way back from Grenoble to Bruges and never went back to the Netherlands because that would have been annoying. But a lot of us had to take more days off. It was tough for us, but I know next year I think they're going back to Friday to Sunday because May 1st is on a Saturday again or something. But they always bounce around. I really like the day off though. Having a day off like after a 3-day tournament, just like before you have to go back to work, wasn't so bad.
Yeah, I arrived in like 3 a.m. home to go straight to a wedding, which was like a rave more than a wedding. So it was good in a way, but I'm even more. I don't know which broke me more, the wedding or the
Tom's
Tom's Tourney. Hard ground, man. That was tough. I'm getting old. I'm getting old.
We've gone quite over our normal time limit here, so I think we're going to close things out. Warsaw invites. I know that there's some Polish national teams there, and Four Hands doing the best out of the UCS ones. Anything you want to say for that one, or did you have much?
No, I have 2 things looking for it, which are interesting. That won't take long. For next year, WCC, do you think that's going to count in the rankings? We just 15th to 22nd.
We just put this out in the competition committee chat actually, because we're thinking about that's usually where summer tours are going to be. So we have to kind of move summer tours for WCCs anyways. And then the question is, if we likely move them into July, then do we end the season after summer tours or do we let WCC count? And do you think WCC should count? I mean, probably teams might take a few more pickups that aren't on the UCS roster. They're not going to want to do that. I don't think we would make it mandatory. Would WIFDIF want to get involved? There's a bunch of question marks on that. So what do you think? What do you think looking at the system? Should WCC count?
Like it probably should. But yeah, that is the danger of like Yaka take Robin Fennick plays with them or some of that, you know what I mean? And then you can see European teams have done that quite a lot, nearly more so when it's in America than in Europe. But I suppose they'd have to have would you be allowing that? Could they roster them?
They could roster them. They could roster them fine. But the other thing that would be iffy is like, let's say WCC, it's just a tournament, right? And there it could be that like you have a pool game that doesn't matter and you would want to rest your players for that because that's how you want to play the tournament. But then that becomes an EUCS ranking game, and then you're like, shit, we can't rest our players because we have to actually win this game for rankings. So maybe that you wouldn't want to do that because you don't want to like hamstring Euro teams to like have to think about extra things rather than just play Wook. So I could see that could be an argument to not count it. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's also like a big time commitment and money commitment that like maybe having that as your
Of getting your
second
extra
ranking
games in.
tournament.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I just thought about that recently. I was like, oh, I wonder what they're gonna do. And it could be, yeah, where are we gonna put the elite invite or stuff, summer invites before or after?
Mhm.
Because it could come down to a game at WCCE. Yeah, it was an interesting thought. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess that's being discussed. Coverage for the EUCS season. You've talked about your one subscription, one platform. You made your pitch online on Instagram, and as I want to know, I know we talked about this before. Maybe you can't tell me the whole story. Like, what are we to expect if I buy the €50 for the year? I love watching European Ultimate. What am I going to see? Can you tell us more? Maybe you'll have more information another time. But what can you
Yeah.
tell me?
So as we mentioned, the spring tours didn't go as planned. We had some issues with our camera vendor that didn't get us the cameras in time, and it did not go as well. And I know there's critiques about the AI footage. I'll be the first to admit it's not the best spectator product. If you're just wanting to watch a great game of frisbee and get excited about the game, it's not the best for that. I think it's very good for teams that want to scout other teams or teams that want to analyze their own team to figure out what a team's doing. It's actually better than the other thing. So it's probably those games are probably more of a product for players and teams than they are for fans. I'll put that out there. We will be having traditional coverage with manual cameras and maybe commentary that's not fully sorted out yet. At Elite Invite, there'll be one field with proper coverage, and the finals and all that will be on that. And then the other fields will be with AI cameras. And I believe every game will be there. So if you want to watch, if you really love one team and you want to see their games, even as a video stream, you'll get access to that. And if you want to watch the finals in a nice, well-produced game, you'll get access to that. The U20s and the Masters Euros will all be included there as well. And there we'll have various levels of coverage, definitely at least one field with manual cameras as well, and probably more with AI cameras. And at EUCF, I know that there's planning to have 2 manual camera manned fields and then maybe 3 other AI cameras. I also was told that I think it was U20s. It might be that every game will be on a stream of some sort. Of course, a lot of them will be AI, but like every game will have film footage for it. So if you want that for scouting or for watching your kids play or whatever, that's there. We're still learning. We're trying to find the balance between getting as many games streamed as possible and quality and cost. The more people that subscribe, the more money we'll have to make more of these streams with commentary and with cameras and all that. We're trying to find that balance and make this cash neutral at least. So yeah, that's it. I think for the summer tours, the aim is to have, I think some of the bigger ones have one manual camera on them. Hopefully all the wildcard games will be streamed in one way or another. So again, we're trying to do lots and lots of coverage. Some of it will be AI cameras. That's just the way it is. But hopefully enough of it is also the other one that's a worthy product for €50. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for
Yeah.
explaining
Yeah.
more.
And I'm told
About
there's an
that.
article coming out soon that will explain this in detail if you didn't get to catch everything I just said there in that little rant. All right, Liam. Any last words? Any last thoughts on your in or out appearance here? Yeah.
Thanks for having me on, Ravi, and love the show. I always like to come on and rant, and I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to do
Always,
so.
Liam.
And yeah, look, I'm looking forward to seeing how the season
Great.
pans out.
Thanks, Liam. Thanks all for everyone for watching. We'll be back a show, I believe, in a couple weeks with the Elite Invite preview. So until then, you want to sign it off the old school style? I've been Ravi Vasudevan.
And I've been Liam Grant, and we'll see you later.